Reinhold Niebuhr, perhaps the greatest Christian political philosopher of the 20th century, whose influence can still be seen in U.S. foreign policy. Yet beneath all of his social ethical contributions, there is within his heart and soul a complete and utter dependence on God. Niebuhr's Christian political realism addressed problems from his days as a pastor in Detroit and as a teacher at Union Theological Seminary with prominent thinkers like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, to his years as an advisor to a variety of U.S. social and political leaders. He was well known on early TV interview shows, but his greatest legacy has been his influence on the leaders of the United States as we engage the world. Christian political realism begins with taking the world seriously. Niebuhr sees Christianity as a prophetic religion that pays particular attention to the political and economic and social dimensions of life. He sees Jesus as offering two principles that can lead to justice. One, to love God, and to love your neighbor, the people with whom you live in the world, as if they were you, as you would love yourself. He believes that human beings have the ability to be communal, to be relational, to be loving, and to build what he called in his day a brotherhood. He said the ultimate concern of a person practicing Jesus' second principle would be what would serve others and not what would serve himself. And that if we were able to follow those principles and be those loving, relational, communal people, then justice would not be necessary. And in the middle of his writings, there is a big but. But that's not the way the world is. He says the world is populated by people who are sinful. And that means we make everything in our lives a god except for God. And that when we do that, the way we approach life, the way we approach other people, the way we approach the environment is we decide that the purpose of all these other people, the environment, the world, is to serve us. We're the center. The ultimate ethic for a sinful person is you have to pursue with what makes you happy. He's criticizing Aristotle. He's criticizing Mills. He's criticizing anyone who has a social ethics that's grounded in what makes an individual happy. He says when that happens, when we become obsessed with our happiness, then we become people who exploit, who treat other people and the environment and the world as a means to an end. And the end is to serve ourselves. Me, myself, I. And when we translate that attitude toward a society, what you find is that there's a society that's defined by dominant groups, people who are just like me, who agree with me, and subordinate groups, those other people who are not like me, they're lesser people, they should not count as much, and you don't get anything that looks like a brotherhood. Now he says, look, the idea of justice, a complete justice, is just impossible in the world the way it is. The best you could get is a relative justice, and what that means is justice is a work in progress. It's trying to figure out how you achieve a balance in the midst of all these different conflicted interests. How do you find a balance when all these people are acting rather selfishly and self-centeredly? He says that's what the task of justice is. And he offers some observations about justice and some principles about justice. He says, look, you got to give up the idea that there's any absolute justice. It's a bit of a criticism for people like Rawls. Justice is always a work in progress. We don't ever arrive. There is a definition for justice, but it's something that we're always working at improving, because the way we practice it is not the way it's defined. So he offers these rules to guide us in our way of trying to balance out all those desires and find some harmony that can lead to some kind of brotherhood. First rule of justice: equality of opportunity is essential. Each person has an equal worth and equal dignity, and we need to create opportunities whereby each person can realize their worth and their dignity. Rule 2: you have to practice an option for the marginalized, the disadvantaged, the poor, because those folks are in the greatest need of an opportunity to develop their worth, their potential, their dignity. Everyone else who has opportunities, everyone else who has resources, they already are doing it. You have to give attention to the people who don't have the opportunities and the resources to do that. You can't have a brotherhood. You can't have a social harmony if there's inequality and if there's a lack of opportunity. And the last rule relates to freedom. Freedom is the context in which people can have the opportunities to realize their worth and dignity. But you have to regulate freedom, because if you let people run rampant with freedom, it's going to lead to inequality. Now, when people are making decisions in this, according to these principles, these rules of justice, they have to use their reason, they have to use their passions, and they have to exercise some kind of power. But that power needs to be controlled. That power needs to be in service to equality. Because when that power is not in service to equality, you get injustice. So what's politics all about? It's about finding the harmony, the balance, the social peace that provides opportunities for people to flourish, grow, and contribute. Too much law leads to tyranny. Too little law leads to anarchy. So you got to find the balance. A simple thing to realize is that the rule for people in authority, people with power, is that as long as they're serving equality, as long as they're serving opportunity, as long as they're working within a context of freedom, that's fine. And if they encounter situations in the world, international politics, international relations, whether they're business or whether they're political, if you find a situation in which people are being denied opportunity, being denied equality, being denied the consideration for those who are least advantaged, being denied freedom, if you find a situation where people are being oppressed, being treated as means to an end, then you have to use your power to subdue them. Now, I'm going to ask you to read Martin Luther King's A Letter from Birmingham Jail. It was really written in a jail. That's a very solid example, accurate example of the social ethics of Christian political realism being put in practice. Perhaps John F. Kennedy's words can best summarize what Niebuhr was saying, the spirit of it. Ask not what your country can do for you. Rather, ask what you can do for your country. See you next week in class.